Our yacht was stinking in admin and paperwork, but I found the solution. I used this productivity software called ClickUp to run our yacht like a business. It tracks our tasks, schedules, and documents all in one app. Now, safety drills are logged as a task, crew scheduling is automated, and important docs are stored and searchable. What used to take me 3 days a month now takes me half a day. It's super customizable whether you're sailing a yacht or scaling a company. Get our custom yacht management template today when you try ClickUp for free at clickup.com/rich podcast. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Rich as Fuck podcast, the money where we talk about money, life, investing, yachting, and all things in between. Today, I am very delighted to welcome Helgi Olafson, yacht chef, ultra runner, lover of life, and someone that I get to call a dear friend. Hello, Helgi. Welcome to the show.
Wait, this is the Rich as Fuck podcast? I think I'm in the wrong place.
We welcome all people. This is like a yoga studio.
Okay, all right. Just drop in for a session.
Yeah, I like your shirt. So for those who don't know, like I mentioned, Helgi is a yacht chef and ultra runner. We recently returned from an odyssey in the desert. Helgi's wearing the shirt for those listeners that are not watching the YouTube feed. The Arizona Monster 300. How are you feeling after that, buddy?
Relieved that I'm done, that's for sure. But yeah, I feel a lot of things. It was a great time to think about life and process a lot of things while I was out there, as well as spend time with all of the crew that I had. You were one of them. My section with you was awesome. We had a great day out there. I think it was somewhere around 27 hours or something that we spent together.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. But, I think the overarching theme for the entire adventure was that everything that I need is right here. I don't need to go and do these big, hard things to feel accomplished. And, I've definitely taken on a lot of projects up until now in my life. But once this one's finished and we've created the documentary series surrounding the experience, I think I'm going to be done for doing these big major projects, focus more on my future, which is why I'm so inspired by you.
Well, that's awesome to hear. That's quite a big announcement you just made there. And I'm sure we've had what, about 5-6 weeks post-race, kind of lots of processing time. And I mean, it's a very nice thing to hear that you realize everything you need is in fact at home. But it doesn't make your mission less special because, I mean, we witnessed what you went through there. That was fucking nuts. But we'll definitely double click on the ultra adventures later. For now, those who don't know you, tell us a bit about yourself, how you got into yachting, and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. I'm 42 years old now, and I started into yachting in 2011 after answering. I answered a Craigslist ad that was out there for being the chef of a charter yacht that was a wooden fantail yacht built in 1931. So I was like, wow, what's that? And rode my bike from the train station in Seattle to this boat that was just really cool. A big white hull, all wood with a teak main salon, and just definitely nothing like the super yachts that we work on now. But it was a great experience, and I really enjoyed the proximity to the guests. It was very, they were coming through the galley to get to the forward salon to go watch the whales and stuff like that. So I really, had forged some lasting relationships with the guests and with the captain, and ended up doing another 2 summers a few years later on the same yacht. And then I was getting my STCW in Washington State while staying on the yacht when it was docked in Seattle. So that was pretty cool, getting to commute through there and get my STCW, which was basically when I committed to getting into the yachting industry. And I started on a yacht called Polly in 2017 in Fort Lauderdale. And it's called Gazelle. It's an alloy yacht. But yeah, that's where I met some of my great friends in yachting that I still work with, some of them today on Lady Elaine. But I guess fast forward, now I'm on rotation, and it's taken me a while to get here. I've always collected a letter of recommendation, or at least tried to get one from every job that I've had, because I believe in, like, you could kind of always have to level up. And I think that's a really important thing for, new people in yachting to remember, that they've got to build their way and show people why they deserve the bigger money jobs. But yeah, anyways, that's kind of my story with yachting. I really love the guest facing part of the role, and logistically, I like to problem solve. So menu planning, as stressful as it is, and ordering and shopping and getting everything for these charters and preparing for them is probably my favorite part, because, well, actually, maybe like once I get the proteins done, because then I have the fridges stocked, the proteins are done, and all we have to do is cook all the food and do all the services and all the days. But yeah, yachting's fun. It also burns me out, and it's kind of turned into more of a job than a passion now, as like a means to do my adventures that I do, which also the rotational thing now works really well for that. So
That's awesome. And tell me, when you initially moved to yachts, what were some misconceptions that you would have had from land? What is something that you realized once you worked on a yacht? You were like, holy fuck, this works a lot different than I anticipated.
yeah, I mean, one of the things with the chef role on a yacht versus other roles, maybe engineer could be something similar, but I feel that my skills that I honed for the first half of my life, in restaurants, were extremely translatable to the yachting industry. And so there wasn't really a ton that surprised me. I mean, I guess it was tough to work underway. That's, especially on a smaller vessel, definitely not fun working underway. But maybe another thing would be, like, you don't have access to the provisions once you leave the shore. So you really have to plan for just having everything that you need, that you might need even. And these people are paying big money for these trips. So it's important that everything goes seamless, and it's okay if you over order on certain things. But then again, there's space. So sometimes you don't have enough space. Yeah. There's a lot of little things that you don't see unless you're in a like confined space like that, pumping out everything as a restaurant, as like a 1-man or 2-man or 3-man show, or woman.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good point. I always tell people when they ask me about yachting, it's the absolute last role I would ever undertake on a yacht is being a chef. I commend you guys immensely. And if you have a good chef, you tend to have a happy crew. I mean, we, as deck monkeys outside, often the only thing we look forward to all day is our next meal. And when you walk in and Chefy whipped out a stunning 3-course for the boys, then morale is good. So kudos to you, chefs.
I appreciate the daps on that, but I think that it's really a team effort on a yacht. And, as the guest, you can see when a team is gelling. And I think that's really important, and really separates the good crews from the bad crews. When the crew gets along and works well together, it really shows in the charter or the trip, which I think that's one of the things that I, not to shed light on negativity, but I think maybe something that could be worked on within the yachting industry is just people not spending their time just going and getting fucked up. Because, like, I see so much of that especially with the younger yachties. And, if they would look at themselves 5 years later and look back on that situation, they probably would have done things a little bit differently. And I mean, at some point you don't know until you do it. And then that's how you learn your lesson, right?
Yeah,
I mean, for me, I was getting into, even doing some party favor type drugs and stuff like that. And, having an addictive personality, it wasn't good to just have easy access to everything all the time, which is what you get when you go down to St. Martin and places like that. So I think that yacht crew should try to steer clear from those types of places, but it's tough because it's so much fun.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of people want to chase that dragon of fun, however they're going to get it. Which for me now, you know, I've been sober now for almost 3 years, and really exercise and being outside and paddleboarding and doing fun stuff like that is really like where I like to be now. So I'm happy there. Happy I did the other stuff and learned not to do it. And now happy to experience adventures, and especially with good friends like you. When people can do things together, they can go farther.
Yeah, 100%. I'm glad you already touched on that, because that was part of the agenda today, and it's important. And I kind of tried to also not trying to shine negativity, but it is something that's not spoken about enough, and it's a true problem. I've lost some friends in the industry. Some people completely go haywire and end up, on the brink of homelessness, and it's tough because we have very little balance. We often have fat wallets with little time, and then thus a bender, the perfect
instant
concoction.
gratification.
That's it. And the formula for a perfect bender gets created. Quite often, we're in places where we see the boss doing it, we see the guests doing it, you just get roped in so quickly. So it, like you mentioned, it's some people need to hit rock bottom first or get close to rock bottom before they make the change. But it's very important to be proactive about this. And for yachties listening to this, that might be struggling, like there's lots of resources out there. You can always reach out to people.
Absolutely.
That like Helgi, that will definitely like take you under their wing, and it's okay to not be okay. That's the point.
As an ultra runner, there's this organization called Bigger Than the Trail, and it helps. You don't have to be an ultra runner, actually. It could be anybody, but it gives free therapy for anybody, needing mental health therapy. A lot of trail runners do use them because it's funny because, well, I don't know if it's funny is the right word, but it's, I guess, coincidental maybe. Well, a lot of ultra runners are former addicts. And I think that there's something to, the changing in one addiction to another, like to a healthy addiction or healthy addiction, which is, it's also a slippery slope that I think needs to be kind of expanded upon a little bit more, because it's more than just going into a healthy addiction, because there's other things that may not be healthy about that, or ways that you could go within that healthy addiction that might make it a little unhealthy here and there. So I just think that balance and really like researching what you're getting into before you get into it, probably a lot like financial investing, I guess, is really important. Just like, what could happen if this happens, and just thinking about possible things that could happen if you're going to make a big decision, like go into ultra running, for instance.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And while we're on that train, let's double click a bit on the ultra running. How did you discover it, and why did you tap into that specifically?
Well, when I was in 2011, after that first gig on the Motor Yacht Discovery, I moved to Hawaii and was executive chef of a restaurant out there that my mom and stepdad owned. And so while I was doing that, I joined this outrigger canoe club, and it was like long distance outrigger paddling, pretty cool stuff. And one of my teammates was looking for a runner to do the running leg of an Olympic distance triathlon called Lava Man Waikoloa. And so I said I could do it and showed up, and I got to be the one who crossed the finish line and just was like totally hooked on triathlon. And, went and got a bike and started a foundation and did all these things and did an Ironman within a year, and then another one. And I was like trying to become a pro. Didn't ever get there, but I was a good age grouper. And then I kind of lost the passion for triathlon just because I felt like it was a little bit more pretentious and about the gear, and like it just seemed like it was a flashy kind of sport. And I went to Oregon where I was living there, before I went to go work on that yacht up in Seattle. And anyways, my buddy Scott Martin, who also has ankylosing spondylitis, invited me for a trail run in the Pacific Northwest, the Columbia River Gorge. I think I was telling you about that gorge waterfalls 100K out there. Yeah, that was where I kind of learned how to trail run and learned what it means to be an ultra runner, because would just go out on the weekends and just go run for the whole day and maybe go Mount St. Helens and go do a Lewitt loop. And it was like a community vibe the whole time. It was always fun. And, you kind of strip down to like being a little kid frolicking out in the woods. And just something about that is fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can attest to that. You introduced me into this world, and you're right. It's kind of just stripping back to like bare basics, and you're like, you just put your shoes on and go run for 27 fucking hours. It sounds nuts to a lot of people, but once you do it, you're like, okay, there's something to this, because to me at least, it's the only thing I've ever found that kind of forces you to be present. And if you're someone that struggles with that and you've got like scatterbrain and you're always busy with a million projects, if you're out running in the mountains, that's the only thing you can concentrate on, because otherwise you're going to snap your ankle or you're going to get lost.
Yep.
That's funny, because I also managed to get us lost on our previous adventure. My bad. Then
yeah.
You mentioned AS. So for those that don't know about ankylosing spondylitis, explain it like I'm 5 years old.
Sure. Well, first, I wanted to say also that, the value of pushing yourself through something hard like an ultra marathon, even if say you haven't done more than a 10K and you push through a half marathon, or it's a half marathon to a marathon, whatever that next distance is. And, if you're able to like go on your own power through that and make it past that distance, it's really like it feels so good to do that, especially if you're doing it through a tough place where, the trails are unforgiving. Maybe there's wild animals there, or the weather's messed up. But basically the value of doing hard things and, either succeeding or not succeeding and learning from that and growing from that, either way, I think that's the real gold of like ultra running in general, and having a community that supports each other and lifts each other up and creates challenges for each other and does the challenges together. Like that's the powerful reason why I keep coming back to trail and ultra running.
That's awesome.
But as far as ankylosing spondylitis goes, another reason why I continue to try to be in motion all the time and do these hard things is because it's helped me battle my condition of ankylosing spondylitis, which is an autoimmune arthritis that involves fusion of joints resulting from enthesitis, which is the inflammation of the entheses. And my disease kind of reacts to that inflammation and may or may not add bone to fuse those areas together, or at least like cause deformities and discomfort and pain and whatnot. So it's a very complex disease. It also, involves the eyes and the skin, and a major fatigue is possible, as well as like being immunocompromised with just having the disease in the first place. And then also taking an anti-TNF steroid, which I take. Yeah. But basically what doctors and medical experts have found is that with the more motion that you can have with ankylosing spondylitis, the better off you're going to be. And a lot of folks don't know that they have ankylosing spondylitis, either because they didn't take the initiative to figure out what it was, or they thought it was something else, or they just dealt with it their whole life thinking, oh, it's just my back, it's the way it is. And then 20 years later they get diagnosed and they're like, oh, I wish I would have done that sooner. So with my advocacy efforts, I'm always trying to promote this earlier diagnosis. I think that's the most important thing. And I was lucky to have been diagnosed at age 19. and also be under the care of the same rheumatologist from that diagnosis until now. It's really nice to have that support system behind you. And I know a lot of folks who have my condition feel alone and like nobody understands what's going on in their body. And, to those folks or to anybody who may have something that, is ailing them, they feel like they can't talk to somebody. It's important that you talk to people about what's going on so that you can share what's going on inside and, let people help you. For me, being able to talk about my situation to other folks helps me understand more about myself and about my condition and potentially like how I can deal with it better. And I know that those conversations early on when I was 19 with the rheumatologist about like, oh, well, am I not going to be able to do anything? Like, what's going to happen to me? And, because I'm thinking that my body's going to fuse together. I'm going to be in a wheelchair the rest of my life. And he assured me that he had like some other patients who were surfing and tennis and there were active people. He said, no, you're going to be fine. Just live a normal life. And so that was so powerful for me, having that support from my doctor, also from my mother throughout my life, and just family and friends and other patients with AS. I think it's really important to have that strength in numbers.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you're a very true advocate for the foundation. We raise some funds for the association. And I mean, I can just tell every time you talk to someone new, every time we meet new people at the race, like you always ask them what their why is. Why are you doing this? And when they ask you back, like that is your reason. And it's really commendable. And it shows that even with hardship and even when you face adversity, like it's really important to kind of dig deep and still kind of you are able to see the silver lining on all of these clouds. So I commend you, and I've seen it in real life. So well done.
Thank you, Charl. I mean, the time that we spent out on the trail was, I'll never forget that, dude. It was awesome.
Yeah, it truly was epic. Like 60-foot high cacti in the middle of the Noran Desert. Yeah, it's something I frequently flick back to my journal during that time, and it's just puts a massive smile on my face. So
yeah, what was that song that you were singing to me as we were running?
I'll be a message to you. I'll be all the reggae song that we twisted.
Let's stop your messing around.
Yeah.
I asked you to sing it like 3 times in a row, didn't I?
Yeah, that song will always remind me of you for sure. And now to pivot away from yachting and ultras. The reason I host this podcast. Let's talk about money. Let's talk about finances. So I know that by spending time with you on the trail and you opening up and being vulnerable, and me being part of the entire operation, I know ultras are not cheap. How much, for those that don't know, would an ultra like the Arizona Monster 300 we undertook, how much would that cost?
Well, the short answer is it depends. Because it depends on how you're going to tackle it. But if basically you can go solo and work out of drop bags, not have a hotel or lodging in the middle, sleep at the aid stations, finish the race, go to the airport, and that's it. Or you can have a full-on support crew with a crew vehicle, an Airbnb, sometimes flights, and all this other stuff, food for all those folks, and so it can get pretty expensive. This race costs about $10,000. All things all said and done.
And tell me, for any of these adventures you've ever done, have you ever gone into debt?
Yes, I have. Yes. I've used credit cards to pay for races sometimes. And, I think about it and I always am like, I probably shouldn't do this. But sometimes it's the only way. And that it's, I've found myself in that situation for multiple things throughout my adult life. And really, it's not the only way. It's just me telling myself that it's the only way. So, I would say future me when I plan on doing an adventure like this, I'm actually going to create a budget for the adventure so that I can, stick to that, because when there's a guideline, it's easier to stick to the guideline. If you don't make a guideline, it's easy to just let it go haywire. And then, it can get expensive pretty quick. The race itself is about 2,600 now for an entry for next year. It's a lot of money, honestly. Like,
I think if you had to explain that to the average Joe on the street, like telling someone that you're paying $2,500 to go run for 7 days in the desert without sleep, with little resources, in the heat, they would be like, why? Like, what happened to you? What went wrong?
Yeah. No, well, so it's permitting and, porta potties and supplies and tracking and staff, food, blankets, fuel for the propane for the fires at night, whatever. There's a ton of expenses to put on something like this. There is a considerable amount of profit, though. And, the races are getting more expensive across the board. Some of them are cheaper than others. Some race directors really like to keep their races accessible to people. And, I feel like there's definitely a level of gatekeeping going on with having a really expensive race. But it's tough because if, in order to put on a race of that distance, it has to be expensive. So that's why I'd say the biggest thing before signing up for something like that would be make sure that you really want to do it and that you really want to get to that finish line. Because if you don't have a strong reason to get there, you'll probably quit. There's a lot of, I see people do it every time, and I feel bad for them because I know they don't really want to do that. I mean, sometimes people get injured and it's definitely the best decision, but the value of pushing through something is usually more powerful than stopping. But sometimes it's the other way around too.
Yeah, you make a good point there. And back on the finance point, it's counterintuitive for me, and I might sound like a hypocrite to the people that's used to me listening and preaching about building a financial future, etc. But if you find something so valuable like you have for all these adventures, and that you were willing to go into debt to fund these ventures, who the fuck cares if that's what makes you happy? You at the end of the day, something, you can get hit by a bus tomorrow, and then you don't need to pay off that credit card debt anyway. So
you never know what's going to happen. Yeah, and for me, having ankylosing spondylitis, I can move now. I can move fine now, but I don't know what's going to happen even tomorrow. But, definitely 10 years from now, I'm probably going to be able to move a lot less. So, but still, I wouldn't change the fact that I've done all these adventures. I really hold each and every one of them near and dear to my heart. I remember a lot of things from each of them that I will remember for the rest of my life. But I probably would have navigated things a little bit differently. And, having done 3 Triple Crown of 200s, that's, basically 3 full summers of racing just to get these buckles. And yes, the experience is great, but I didn't need to do 3 of them in a summer, so yes, it's great and so valuable, each and every one of these experiences, just to be able to learn from them, and all I change out there. I become a better person in most ways, maybe a little bit worse of a person in other ways. For instance, my level of patience for people who don't push through things has gone very high after I've been able to push myself through these things with my ankylosing spondylitis. It's given me this holier than thou attitude that I don't want,
That's very real of you, introspection,
It's true. Yeah. But also now I'm reflecting on that and realizing that, even if I did think that, I'm still just a normal human being who's got problems going on where like my joints are starting to hurt and I'm having to deal with like being 40 and learning how to take better care of myself, you know?
Yeah, I understand that. And yeah, you're all very good points. And once again, like I sometimes find myself on the opposite end of the spectrum because I'm so monetary conscious and like so aware of financial stuff because it is something I enjoy that
I admire that about you, by the way.
I think, thank you. But I think sometimes that comes with its own price because I would, for example, sacrifice
Miss
an
out on
adventure
something.
because I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, that 2.5 grand can be invested. That will give me because then in 10 years' time, it will be worth 15,000. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be there in 10 years' time. So then I fucking die early. Something happens, I die early. And now I have all this money in the bank. And for what? So it's all about ironing out your own balance, your own wish. And for people listening, I'm not like a complete miser, like living like a monk. I still do cool shit. It's just, I think you and I are good case studies of being kind of on the opposite side of the train tracks. We can maybe both learn from each other and like weave strategies into each other,
Yeah, you could do the finances and I could do the rest of the logistics, and we'd have a pretty solid plan, I'm pretty sure.
Solid plan. And I'm telling you now, and this is on live recording, that I do want to get more into these adventures. I don't have a rotational gig, but once I exit the industry, I really intend on doing it more seriously. And I would love for you to be my crew chief and making sure that logistics are in order. And then I just go balls to the wall and go run 700,000 miles somewhere in Egypt. I'm dramatic.
Okay. All right. Well,
So,
I do owe you a pacing section as per the rules. I got to come out and support you. So let me know and I'll be there.
I would love that. Yeah, me and my deckhand Ben are already looking at races, and it's exciting. Living in California makes it a bit easier to train
Absolutely.
because, as you know, the South Florida lack of elevation, you could feel that when you were climbing Mount Lemmon in Arizona.
I think that we should maybe talk about how to navigate doing an adventure while you're yachting.
That was our follow-up question. So why don't you tell us how have you managed that for all these years?
Well, first of all, I think that the most important thing is that the crew member doesn't get lost in the sauce as far as just thinking that they're glued to this yacht that they work on and that, they can't do anything because they have this yacht that they work on. Yes, that can be the case in some stages, but that's when the decision needs to be made, or at least the conversation needs to be made in the yachtie's head about like, is this position serving me well? Should I be doing this? What's the means to an end? How do I get past this and still make a plan to get out of that situation that's not serving them well? Of course, collect the letter of recommendation. Always, gain more in the industry as you go through it. But sticking up for yourself within the industry is very important. And I think that's something that a lot of yachties don't do just because it's like not common for other yachties to do that. But it doesn't mean that you can't do it. We're human beings. And, at the end of the day, we're hired by these yachts to be basically available 24/7 while we're working. And that involves using our personality and like we're hired because we are a person that works on this vessel, and it's really about your personality. How can you be delivering the best possible guest experience? There's things that I feel that yachties don't stick up for themselves because they just get into this machine mode of being working all the time and they can never do anything. And then they don't try to change that and try to be like, oh, I have a huge adventure that I want to do, something that seems really hard, but I really want to do it. And, once they get that initial taste or desire to do something, that's when really the planning process needs to start. because you can't do something hard and just involved for like a week. Like if it's a week vacation and you're going to go to, some all-inclusive club somewhere and just chill for a week, then that's a different story. But planning an adventure and involved in like, maybe seeing a few different countries and driving a car or hiking or, lots of different things, like really experiencing a place involves getting into the heart of it. And, I think that really it's about getting that time off, but having a hard conversation with your captain when they say, no, that's nothing, that's not going to work for us. Maybe try to, present it to the captain in a way that shows your value for the program and the value for being fresh and mentally there because you have your cup filled, your adventure cup filled. There's a lot of different ways. What are your thoughts on that, Charl?
I agree 100%. And if you don't ask, you won't know, is the other thing. Often yachties feel trapped, as you mentioned, and it's like, okay, I live on a ship, I work on a yacht, this is all I do, this is my identity, I belong to my master. And you're like, most of the time, the captains they're also human beings. You're just like, hey, dude, this is really important to me. Also, I'm entitled to leave. So this is what I want to do. And if you drive across the point and show to someone your passion, and your passion doesn't have to be as gnarly as running 300-mile ultramarathons. It can be collecting stamps in Portugal. It can be whatever the fuck you are into doing. But that is super important. And I was extremely guilty of that and kind of being the best deckhand and then bosun and then first mate, like being an identity until one day you realize the day you realize how replaceable you are is the day that you can actually liberate yourself, because you're like, if something had to happen, they can find 20 guys that will send their resume in the next 5 minutes to replace me on my current boat. Fact.
Absolutely.
I'm not that special.
So find a program that those people want you to be, filling your cup and being the best when you're at work because your cup's full, not because you're led by fear or something like that. It's, we have to want to be doing our job well to do it well, and in order to do your job well, you have to fill your cup. And but I'd say that like one of the other parts to it is that a lot of times it'll be like, no one else can do your job. That's why you can't have the time off. But that's kind of a cop-out because there's a lot of people that can do everybody's job, just like you said, the other way around. But basically, like, I think that needs to go away a little bit too. And people should be able to, if they have a vacation plan and a trip comes up, hire somebody else to do the trip. You don't need to, ruin the vacation and like lose a bunch of money on Airbnbs or whatever. And that happens a lot these days. I don't think that it's fair to yacht crew because, mentally that really sucks for people. And like, it's time that honestly, like, we're not numbers, we're human beings. We work hard for the money that we make. And, it's, as I said, it's like it's a personality based industry, and we have to be on our game. And in order to be on our game, we have to fill our cups. So help us out, Caps.
Yeah, all of you listening. And, there's a lot of horror programs where that stuff, but I think both of us have found a place where we are enabled in a positive sense, where, we get supported. Our boss is a lovely guy. He contributed to our mission. He's like, he donated for a good cause and he sent us encouraging messages when we were out there in the desert. So there is hope, but unfortunately it still feels like we are the outliers having
we're
these
basically our jobs are somebody's toy usually, and it's hard to swallow that, man, but if you want truffles on your crackers, and that's fine with me.
As long as you're fun by adventures. You mentioned earlier that you think after we wrap up this chapter being the Arizona Monster documentary or series or however the content team is going to put it out, what is next? What is the long-term of yours that doesn't involve suffering running?
Well, it does involve suffering and running.
Let's have it.
Yeah, but more for anybody, for people who want to challenge themselves. I also organize a 15-person foot race staged adventure in Montana called the Mighty Gallatin. I think I've spoken to you about that before. So I'm really excited to be putting on the fourth iteration of it next year in July. And it's 300 miles in 7 days with about 82,000 feet of gain. So it's a really challenging adventure. And we got our first finisher last year. Took this year off, and we'll do it again next year. But it'll be really exciting to see, how everybody, it's a different group every year. So, everyone kind of comes as strangers and leaves as family. So that's a really cool aspect of the small group size adventure, everyone helping each other out. And it's really like a testament to community and logistics of an adventure in grizzly country is pretty tough, but that's what makes it a great adventure. And so excited to do that. Basically, I'm developing my exit strategy from yachting. Really is the Ecopath Endurance is my partner Samantha and myself's business, doing events and adventures and also films to kind of create awareness and promote opportunities for the younger generations to get into endurance sports. Oftentimes you go to a start line at an ultra and you got ages 35 to 45 or 55 and really nothing younger or in their 20s. Sometimes it happens, but I don't think that there's enough out there to draw those younger generations in. And so I really try to promote that within our Ecopath Endurance business.
That's awesome. That sounds like a very natural kind of symbiotic exit strategy for you, because it's something that you love and adore and something that you're really good at as well. We saw you nail the logistics on the last adventure. Plus, we've had the privilege of running your first organized ultra last June or July, I believe, in North Carolina. So you definitely have talent and experience, and I think that's a good way to phase out. And if you can give back by training and mentoring the younger generation and build a new phase of endurance athletes, then you got to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also want to open up an Etsy shop and make stuff.
Like what?
I don't know. I just whatever. Like I have this lantern, like glass lantern that you put candles in. You can kind of hold them up. And I put weather stripping around the inside of the door and like a cage up top so that when I close the door, a fly can't get out. And then I made like carnivorous plant holders inside of it, and LED lights and stuff. So I could sell those on Etsy.
That's pretty epic. That's definitely the first side hustle on the Yachting Investor I plan on investing in. So congrats.
One time I made a pooper scooper too.
I just got a puppy, so that sounds pretty good about now.
Yeah.
Now, Helgi, to finish up the show, I'm going to hit you with a few rapid fire questions. Rapid fire being rapid fire, short and sweet. Okay.
Copy that.
Number one, favorite pre-race meal?
Steak and potatoes and vegetables.
Glorious. Secondly, what is your go-to bougie yacht dish?
I've been working on this beef Wellington bites lately that I can just keep in the freezer. And so I don't have to spend 3 days prepping it every time. And it's working out. It's pretty bougie.
Wow, it sounds delicious. Biggest financial mistake?
Putting my races on credit cards or getting a high interest consolidation loan to consolidate debts.
That breaks my heart. But thank you for your candor. If you weren't running or cooking, what would you be doing?
Trekking,
You got me? You got your
shuffling.
technicality? I see. He's a one-dimensional man, folks. And then finally, to close us off, what keeps you going when you really want to quit?
Definitely the people who have ankylosing spondylitis and can't move. Like those people, my heart goes out to them. I feel bad and I wish I could help, you know. But I guess that's why I keep trying to push my own limits to inspire other people to get moving.
That's awesome. And yeah, I mean, you don't just wish you can help. You do a lot for the foundation. So I'm sure they are very grateful for you. And then finally, if people want to learn more about you, more about EcoPath, more about Mighty Gallatin, more about the illness, how do they reach you?
I would say the best way to get in touch with me is just go to, let's say, Helgi Olafson on Instagram or ecopathendurance.com.
Perfect. I'll be sure to add that in the show notes. And Helgi, dear friend, thank you. Can call you a brother, and it's been a really cool couple of years thus far, and I look forward to more adventures going forward. And